Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Mercury, Created by the Sun Due to Planet X. Now, Figure 1 shows a stereo core 2 image of the Sun in which several objects that should not be there can be seen. And Figure 2 shows an enhanced version of the bottom part of the image where you can see these two very large objects. And it gives a better idea of what these objects really are. As you can see, there seems to be a structure around this one, and definitely a very circular structure around that one, indicating this is actually a spherical object. So they are clearly spherical and can only be Planet X system stellar cores, as large numbers of these objects have been observed in solar observing spacecraft in recent years, usually in the Sun's corona. In this image, it is, however, not clear whether the objects are very close to the Sun or not. So here we are. So the largest object is spherical and seems to be draped in light-emitting plasma. You can see that there. And the object has a large apparent size. It's not likely to be under the Sun, suggesting that the light coming from it cannot be reflected light, but that the object is emitting light from the material that its northern hemisphere seems to be covered in. Now, since the covering seems to be spherical in shape, the object is likely to be spherical. You may look at Article 491 for more details. So the largest object, as I say, appears to be covered, or at least its northern hemisphere appears to be covered in this light-emitting material. And this is likely to be chromospheric magma from the Sun or another solar system object which has a living core, since it has become clear that all living celestial objects have the capability to create matter from their cores, and that the material created is in the form of hot liquid plasma, what we call magma in the case of Earth. But even active galactic nuclei create matter in the form of liquid plasma, which then condenses into a quasar, according to Halton Arp in his book Seeing Red. But not all magma will have the same gravitational potential. Magma created by the Sun will have much more potential than magma created by the Earth, and magma created by galactic nucleus will have much more than the stars. Thus, Planet X system stellar cores can obtain magma at different levels of gravitational potential by going to different objects in the solar system capable of creating it. And you may look at Article 522 entitled Stellar Cores or Sources of Matter, White Holes, and Article 523 entitled Planet X and the Solar System, Jupiter, and All Gas Giants or Recent Acquisitions. And as you can see, this is this image again, where you can see that large object with that magma, which most likely came from the Sun. For such an object, most likely close to the Sun, although we cannot be absolutely sure. But it has liquid magma on it, and this bright spot on this one is most likely some liquid magma that the object has acquired as well from one of the solar system objects, most likely the Sun. So in Figure 1, the brightest object at the top, which was in the form of a cross, and we'll go and look at it. There it is. As you can see, there seems to be an object behind it there. Now, this object was Mercury, and Mercury is therefore, and so this object was behind Mercury. And we know that because Mercury was aligned with Stereo A spacecraft at the time. So that could, of course, it could always have been something else, but it's very likely to be Mercury because Mercury was aligned at that time with that object. Now, this object had a width which was 1/3 the size of the sun's, and you can see how I calculated that here. I drew a circle around it, and then I could see that a circle of that size would take 3 of those to draw the diameter of the sun, which means that's about 1/3 the size of the sun. So it was about 1/3 the size of the sun, so the object would therefore have a radius of 0.33 times the radius of the sun. But we know exactly where Mercury is, and Mercury is about 0.4 AU away from the sun, so the object would thus be 40% further from the spacecraft than the sun, and would therefore be 40% larger than if it had been at the same distance as the sun, which means that it would have a radius of 0.42 times the radius of the sun. Now, since Mercury has a radius of 2,440 kilometers and the sun's radius is 6,995,508 kilometers, this object would be about 100 times larger than Mercury. Now, and this is absolutely huge. And since Planet X system stellar cores usually make solar system objects of comparable gravitational potential their host, it is unlikely that such a large object has made Mercury's host. But yet it is not impossible, as Mercury, which is the closest planet to the sun, must also be the planet with the largest core and the planet with the highest gravitational potential. This means that Mercury must be almost entirely a core and must also have a very thin solid crust. If Mercury is hosting such an object, then it will almost certainly also be expanding, just as Earth expanded at the time of the Great Flood. And you may look at Article 521 entitled Planet X and the Flood. The Earth expanded due to matter creation by its core. And so then Mercury is 60% closer to the sun than Earth, and therefore its core is likely to be 60% larger than Earth's. Earth's core has a radius of 1,220 kilometers, so Mercury's core is likely to be about 2,000 kilometers in radius, or about 80% of Mercury's radius. And a research project done with radar suggests that the liquid goes up to 85% of Mercury's radius, which would mean that its solid crust is only 15% of its radius, or 366 kilometers. And this would make Mercury's magma layer only 5% of its radius. A planet with such a large core and such a small magma layer suggests that it was not long ago that the planet came into being, as we would expect a planet to grow its own magma layer from its core. This is what seems to occur with galaxies. Galactic cores eject galactic liquid plasma or galactic magma, which condenses into a quasar or small galactic core, which then starts ejecting its own magma, which condenses into star clusters and then arrange themselves into spirals or ring structures. In other words, it forms the arms of the galaxy. And you may look at Article 126 entitled White Holes instead of Black Holes at the center of galaxies. Thus, a planet would be ejected from its parent star as a core, which then ejects magma, which forms into a liquid inner layer followed by a solid outer layer, where the liquid layer solidifies. It will most likely also slowly form an atmosphere. The atmosphere will separate from the magma, which the core creates, and thus a planet slowly forms. And you may look at Article 522 entitled Stellar Cores or Sources of Matter or White Holes. And here's an image of Mercury, and Mercury's closeness to the sun, as I said, suggests that it has a very large core, which then suggests that it is a newly formed planet, ejected as a planetary core by the sun a few thousand years ago, which then formed into what we see as planet Mercury now. So the fact that Mercury is not much larger than its core suggests that it is a newly formed planet, which was ejected as a core by the Sun not too long ago. Since we are dealing with astronomical timescales, though, this would most likely mean that Mercury was spat out by the Sun a few thousand years ago. This places the creation of Mercury by the Sun at about the same time as the Great Flood, when the planet X system seems to have started affecting the solar system. This suggests that it was the interaction between the Sun and the planet X system objects that came in at the time that induced the Sun into such a frenzy of matter creation activity that it created a new planet. So in conclusion, a stereo A core 2 image seems to show an object which is 120 times larger than Mercury behind it. If such an object is close to Mercury, the planet is most likely having violent volcanic eruptions and growing in size, as the Earth seems to have done during the period of the Great Flood. As Mercury is so close to the Sun, it will have a very large core, which suggests that it is a newly formed planet, most likely ejected as a planetary core by the Sun a few thousand years ago, when the planet X system objects, which came in at the time, induced it into intense matter creation events. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.